And welcome. This is the Hypnotorious Podcast. John Wylie on the other end, hypnotist from Boise, Idaho. I'm David Barron, Ontario, Oregon, New Hampshire Hypnosis as well. And this is where we basically talk about hypnosis. And what we're discussing here mostly is for really anyone who has an interest in hypnosis. And I find you tell people you're a hypnotist, and people are really curious.
Oh, yeah.
So for professionals as well, we've decided to sort of talk about some of the weirder things as professionals we have been asked to do. I'll start with one of my very first clients.
Good.
I just started a practice in California. Uh-huh. And I was actually just looking for anyone to practice with, so I put in an ad saying that I'm a hypnotist, and this person called me and she explained that her and her husband like to do role playing, and that he wants to be hypnotized to do things that he will not remember, and likes her to be in complete control. I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. So I met them, and
now you're talking like intimate things, like sexual things, right?
Not necessarily. We're talking about mostly dominance and submission type stuff.
Okay.
They like to go to the leather balls and dress up in latex clothing and things like that. Okay. But so we went there. I went there, and we met. And he was one of these people that was a drop-dead somnambulist. I snapped my fingers and said sleep, and he just fell over limp. So, and it was amazingly straightforward to work with him. I basically said, from this point forward, you'll follow these instructions, and then I gave her the instructions. I said, whenever you want to hypnotize him, you'll say this, and give him direct instructions. And I think I must have spent 20 minutes with him. And so I go on my way, and I get this text, or it was a phone call that she called up and said, oh, this is working really great. I sent him to the post office wearing his latex pants and nothing else. And he was just fine with it. So however they used it, they certainly seemed to have and it's interesting, these were not people who were unsuccessful. They had a boat in the backyard. They were, there's assumptions you just can't make about people who do this sort of thing. So it's really interesting. That was one of my first. I've had some weird ones as well. But what about you?
Well, gosh, to this point, I haven't had anything along those lines, but I can remember, this is a little bit more on a serious note, but about a year or two ago, I had a young guy call me who was bisexual, and he was engaged to a girl, and because of their culture, it was very frowned upon to be bisexual or homosexual, and fortunately, at least he was bisexual, and he was attracted to women too. But he was telling me about how he would still find himself attracted to men too, and he wanted me as a hypnotist to eliminate that. Entirely, so that he was never ever attracted to any men, because he didn't want to tell his fiancée about this other side of him, right? Because he was ashamed, and because of as a hypnotist, I believe that it's important for me anyway. I'm not going to speak for all hypnotherapists and hypnotists out there, but for me personally, it goes against my code of ethics to disempower someone, to do something to someone, even if they ask me to, that I feel ultimately would be harmful to them, or would disempower them. My job, I feel, as a hypnotist, is to give that person more options, more choice, more freedom in their life, not less. So I declined to take that person as a client, and I wish them the best. Uh, what are your feelings on that?
I've never had that request. I know the fellow who mentored us, Jeff Stevens, he has had that request a couple of times, and he accepted it. And it took me, I had to sort of pry it from him, the process that he used. But the very first thing that he did is he verified with the person that their sexual orientation they sincerely wanted to change that sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the factors that made a difference is they were particularly young, and they were probably more malleable. But the process he used, he hypnotized them. He did what Tony Robbins calls the Dickens pattern. He has them imagine going down the road of their current sexual orientation with all the guilt and things like that they're feeling currently, and making that worse and worse, and then going down the other road in their mind of changing, and being heterosexual. And gosh, I'm going from memory here. And then going into a subconscious level, speaking directly to the subconscious mind, to let him know that what he has felt toward men is fine, but that's something of the past. It's not. There's nothing bad about it. It was just something that happened. You are aware of it, and from this point forward, your attraction is toward females. And at least I think he did it. I think he's done it with 2 people effectively. He using that process. Now, I've never been asked that. He also told me of someone who he was hired to go see to make that change, but the person did not want it, so
Right.
he didn't do it. He took the parents' money and said, "Oh, can't do it." The parents were wanting the change,
Right.
but not the person. So
Interesting.
but I have gotten some weird ones that I declined. One was an email, and the email said, "I am it's an abbreviation, ADBW." Okay, so he's an ADBW, and I had to look that up. It stands
I
for
have no idea
Adult Baby Diaper Wearer. So this is a fellow who likes to dress up in diapers and be a baby.
Wow.
Okay. And what he wanted to do is to be able to be incontinent, to urinate in his diaper.
Oh.
And he eventually called me, and I was.
David, that is super. Could I just say that is super, super weird?
Well,
wow.
I
okay.
I had some time to mentally prepare for it from the email. So I basically, and I had to think about it, and I thought, and he asked me if I could help him become incontinent for this stuff, and I said, well, can hypnosis help, was his question. I said, yes, I think hypnosis can help. And frankly, it is simply not something I do. I mean, I don't involve myself in the fetish sort of aspects of it. I know there are people out there, and you can find them, and they will help you. And I certainly wish you the best, but it's not really the skill set that I'd go toward, that I'm in. And frankly, I find sometimes the fetish sort of stuff, I mean, okay, I've been doing this. There are people who that's all they do hypnosis-wise is fetish type things.
Right. That's their niche.
That's their niche. For me, it's sort of boring. I've been there. Okay, yes. But, after a while, you've got to tell people, when to laugh, what's funny that they should eat, get them in such this crazy hypnotic slave state sometimes.
Yeah.
That for me, it's too much work. I want people to be happy and independent. But you're right. That's
as
weird.
far as the whole mind control slave thing, I don't think people realize how much work it is to have a slave. Do you really, really want to control someone's mind, control everything they do? That is way too much work. I have a hard time just deciding what I'm going to do. You know what I
know.
mean?
Well, I think we might have mentioned this before. I will certainly mention it again. A friend of mine, a hypnotist, Chase Hughes, wrote a book called The Ellipsis Manual. He talks about how to make he talks about how to make essentially hypnotic couriers, government type stuff. But he also says what it requires is daily contact, weekly training, and just ongoing supervision to keep this person at that level. Now,
it's a lot of work.
And it's even more if you want someone to be totally in what they call the sub, meaning subordinate, the subspace, so that they're just, all they are doing is responding to commands you give them. And you're absolutely right. It is way too much work to be a domineer or dominatrix, but some people really get joy out of that. So, I wish them the best.
I think in most situations like that, they do it as kind of a temporary kind of for the evening, or maybe for a phase. Then they'd probably get tired of it, and eventually it would they would just go on to other things.
Right.
I would imagine.
Now, I've heard rumors, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors there are a few wealthy psychologists, psychiatrists who have a big estate and a little bunker of slaves that they keep in the bottom. This is a crazy lifestyle thing, but I don't know. It's certainly something that can be done, but as a hypnotist, I think anyone who really likes hypnosis and thinks of it for that purpose, they just haven't done hypnosis enough. Simply because they're doing it for childlike desires for power, and once they get it, okay, now what do I do with this? It's
yeah, they didn't think it through completely.
Yeah, it's like those racetrack
like children.
Yeah, it's like those racetrack dogs that are trained to chase after this piece of felt, but when they actually see a rabbit and they catch it, they catch and go, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, I don't even know what to do with this.
Yeah, exactly. So what other weird things that might have you've occurred?
Oh, well, thinking about this, one really good example came to mind of a really unusual situation that happened to me a while back. A woman called me up, and she was very evasive. Come to find out that she was being so evasive because her boyfriend was like right there with her. Evidently, this woman was dating a man that was schizophrenic, right? And that's unfortunate. For any of you that out there don't really understand why it's problematic to work with schizophrenics, is because they're always hallucinating. They're like in permanent hallucination mode. Okay, so her boyfriend was a schizophrenic, and he had hallucinated that she was having affairs on him with all these other men, and she thought that she could, with him, come into my office, and in hypnosis, of course, she is compelled to tell the truth, and that would convince him that she was telling the truth. And obviously, this whole thing would be a huge can of worms. There is no way I would touch this with a 50-foot pole.
Yeah.
And I explained to her very politely, very sympathetically, why that was just not something that would be a good idea.
Yeah. That is very weird, because on January 1st of last year, not this year, but last year, I scheduled an appointment with a lady who wanted to recall some things. That's all I knew. Do a little forensic hypnosis to
Mm,
refresh some memories. Well,
right.
she comes in with her husband, and it's exactly the same situation. He's not schizophrenic. They just, a couple years ago, they were drinking heavily. They
Mm,
both passed out. He thought he heard her having sex with one of his family members and just
uh,
absolutely believes it. She doesn't
mm,
know. So she thought a little forensic hypnosis would prove. Quite frankly, I almost got pissed off at them both. Just this is not what hypnosis is. It's not about truth. It's not about a truth serum. And
no.
I always, what I point out in this case, and again, it wouldn't have worked with the schizophrenic, but what I want to point out is what you're lacking here has nothing to do with hypnosis. It has to do with trust.
Right.
She wants to trust that this issue will never come up again. And he wants to trust that when he's passed out drunk, she's not going to have sex with somebody.
Right.
you know?
Without his permission.
Oh yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
those things
Interesting.
have those things have happened. It was really interesting you mentioned that because I was actually going to say mention my story first. So yeah, it was very bizarre.
I'm
And
sure there are a lot of similar things out there that happen along those lines too.
yeah,
Anybody who's studying hypnosis, people need to understand that hypnosis, people can lie in hypnosis. The subconscious mind, and for whatever reason, especially in a situation like that where the spouse is sitting right there, um, you know, people don't necessarily always tell the truth,
right.
any more than they do when you're dealing with their conscious mind.
Yeah. And on top of that, the subconscious mind could fabricate something that
Yeah,
they believe is
absolutely.
absolutely true. So,
Hmm.
and that's that's called dissembling, I think it's called. But
Like
um,
false memories.
yeah, false
It's
memories.
easy to install false memories. It's why you need to be really careful whenever you're working with any kind of forensic hypnosis where you're trying to enhance memory. You need to be extremely careful because it's so easy to, even just with simple implication, not
Yeah,
even saying something overtly or very clearly, the subconscious mind, especially if it's in rapport with the hypnotist, it's very easy to do. Anyway.
yeah. No, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Um, let's see. So we're talking about weird. I think when talk about weird stuff, we always talk about someone's minds will always go to the sexual things and to the fetishes. So we've covered
Hmm.
some of the fetishes. One of the, and I have to give credit to Wendy Friesen for sort of teaching me this. Um, but well, first of all, I'll explain it. You're familiar with what an anchor is
Oh
in
yeah.
neurolinguistic programming. You elicit an emotion, and then you touch. In this case, you would be sliding your finger over one of the digits of the other person's hand. So you do it enough times so that as you move the finger over that person's finger, it's associated with the feeling. Okay, so someone, this gal came up to me. She was at the gym. We got in the conversation, and she's dating, and she wanted to. I want to say this delicately. She wanted to be comfortable giving oral sex.
Right.
So I said, well, yeah, it can be done. And so we went to a secluded place that was glass all around it. So nothing obvious was taking place from the outside. But we did the hypnosis, and I had her set her hand on the table, and on her four fingers, I elicited four different emotions, each associated with that movement up the finger. And I think one emotion was excitement. The other emotion was love. Another emotion was incredible pleasure. And another emotion was total satisfaction. And so we went through that a whole bunch of different times. And just practiced each one separately, and of course she's totally going for it. And then I said, and now, just imagine what would happen when you feel all of these things when you're performing oral sex. And I slid all 4 of them at the very same time. And her eyes were closed and her face turned beet red, and she just started to sort of pant, and her eyes sort of rolled up a little further back in her head. And then we ended the hypnosis, and she immediately said, "Okay, I've got to go." And the next time I saw her, she grabbed me by the wrist and said, "I got to tell you something." And so she sufficiently detailed the experience she had and how satisfied her boyfriend was.
Good for them.
Yeah. But again, I want to give credit. Wendy Friesen showed that one, taught that, and she did it for the very same reason. One of the stories that she told is she taught this couple taught this woman this, and the lady ended up getting so much satisfaction out of the act of giving oral sex that even when she was pissed off at her husband, that's what she wanted to do.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going, okay, well that'll solve a problem.
A lot of couples would go for that.
Yeah. So anyway, as far as the sexual things, have you gotten any of the weirder ones or unusual?
No. I don't have a lot of hadn't had opportunities to go there much yet. Just really mundane stuff, like a lot of the motivation for a lot of the weight loss clients that I come in to see is related to sex. Women who want to lose weight, and also men who want to lose weight to be sexier for their spouse or their significant other. But I do have one that's like kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, just something that's really kind of odd and unusual, but super mundane, not sexual at all. I had a client who came in to me a while back for golfing performance enhancement, and it worked so well for him that he recently called me back, and he's been in the process of stopping smoking. Now, he didn't ask me to help him stop smoking because he's already halfway down that road just all by himself. But what he did encounter is now he's hooked on this nicotine gum. And so, have you ever run into anything like that?
Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward. I told him it's pretty straightforward to be able to remedy that. We'll just replace that habit of chewing nicotine gum with regular gum. But you don't run into that very often, at least I haven't.
Not too often. I mean, with the ones I have, it's like vaping. They stop smoking cigarettes so they can start vaping again, but they realize it's just as much an addiction as the cigarettes. So that I've done. That's happened a couple times. I thought you were going to somewhere about sex here, so I was wondering where this is going.
Sorry, nope, just super mundane.
Well, I have gotten guys contacting me for sexual performance, specifically premature ejaculation, usually, and again, it's pretty straightforward as far as the result. I remember. Again, our mentor, Jeff Stevens, he did that. He did it for erectile dysfunction. And he did it enough times that people were contacting him and referring to him as the dick doctor.
Oh, wow.
And he just stopped it. He says, no, I do not want a reputation as the dick doctor. So I'm not going to do that. No. So that's one of the weirder directions people can go with this.
Well, especially since he isn't a doctor.
Yes.
I get accused of being a doctor every now and again, and I always have to correct people. No, I am not a doctor.
Right.
And don't
I let them. I tell them the same thing. I let them know. Well, you can think of me as a doctor, that's okay, as long as you know I'm not. Uh, so,
Yeah.
and it's an authority thing, basically.
Right.
So, yeah. Let's see, what other interesting things did we talked about this earlier, some things we're going to talk about. I think the adult baby diaper wear is one of the more
Oh,
bizarre ones.
definitely. Definitely.
But
I
then,
think that trumps any of mine that I've had in my experience.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's see, and um, let's talk about some of the stuff that you have were talking about earlier before we spoke together. You were talking about, um, I think it's one of them, using hypnosis for sports performance. I mean, that's something that
Yeah,
hypnosis
sports and pain.
can always remove a problem, but can also augment a skill,
Yes, it
which I think
can.
is awesome.
It's really important that people understand that. Hypnosis isn't just for removing obstacles and fixing problems. It also can give us way more of the good stuff that we like and that people want in their lives, like more money, more success, whatever that means for them. So working
Yeah.
with, um, yeah, and I've had my fair share of people who have come in um, to work on sports enhancement, sports performance, like my client that came in and had great results with his golf game.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
know Jeff Stevens worked with that somewhat too, and have also worked with young athletes,
Oh
young
yeah.
kids going to school, and they're very malleable, and it's so helpful, and it's very gratifying to take a teenager that is early in life and to help them enjoy some real solid success. Maybe help them overcome some self-doubt, some challenges that they have, because that's something that they're going to be able to take with them, help them be more successful through everything that they do.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
One
a
of the
lot of fun.
things, it's one of the easier ways to go about it too. One of my one of my clients, he called me up and asked if I could help with dartitis. I had no idea what dartitis is until he told me he's a dart player. And
Uh,
essentially, it's the very same thing as what golfers call the yips. He would hold on to the dart just a microsecond longer than he needed to. And it affected his game. And typically the way that we do this is everyone knows that everyone who has played a sport has had an experience, or at least can imagine an experience of everything working smoothly, of just
mhm.
being totally in the zone. And once we can sort of focus on that, it's pretty straightforward to anchor it.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a mental rehearsal.
Yep.
Um, I think Tony Robbins, he even talked about, I don't know if it's Tony Robbins who talked about it, but there was a pianist in China who was a concert pianist, and he was imprisoned for about 10 years during the Cultural Revolution. But when he came out, he was technically more skilled because all he could do in prison is mentally play the piano,
Mhm.
mentally. And it just continued to wire the nervous system in such a way. And those athletes who are particularly good at it, they do dedicate a certain amount of time to going through the process mentally, not just being on the
Right.
field and doing it, but sitting in the chair, running it perfectly in their mind. And
Right.
for me, um, when I started learning things about language patterns and I wanted to talk to girls and be confident and be one of these, use language patterns to meet girls and things like that, that's what I would do. I would imagine, I would hallucinate a person in front of me, a woman in front of me, and I would deliver my presentation, whatever it was, and I would intentionally throw in every obstacle, you know, like, you know, like she would say, you're just playing me, or I don't get it. What are you talking about? I would intentionally throw in obstacles so I would be able to overcome them.
Mhm.
And that's actually one of the reasons I got so eager to do hypnosis with real people is I wanted the live experience of affecting people in such a dramatic way. And that's
Yeah.
the rest is history.
Yeah. And as far as the mental rehearsal goes for enhancing sports performance, that's one of the things that I talk about in my book is a really good example of that. Well, another really good example is Tiger Woods has been using hypnosis and self-hypnosis from the time he was small, and look at the level of success that he's achieved in golf.
Absolutely.
And it's largely due to hypnosis and hypnosis-like processes that he's used. So
yeah, that reminds me. One of the processes I do that again was taught by Jeff Stevens is the learning place. It's a hypnotic memory process.
I was hoping you'd bring that up.
Oh, good. And the objective of it is it's a 3-day training. It's really mushing the mind in hypnosis for 3 days, so that it essentially creates an eidetic memory for anything that's of value. There's no mnemonic system. It's just immediately stored to be recalled when it's needed. And what I was thinking, well, and I'm going to take a little aside. There are people in the world who have what's called perfect autobiographic memories. So you can Google that. And they literally remember everything. You can ask them what happened on this date, and they will tell you. You can ask them what date did Farrah Fawcett die, and if they've read the article on that date, they know the date. So I'm thinking, if you can get someone young enough so their mind is still in the process of forming, and put them through this hypnotic memory training, I would be amazed at what would happen. What would happen if this became
interesting?
What would happen if it became part of the culture, and a majority of people had just expected it? Just like the majority of people expect to have breakfast in the morning. What would happen if the majority, or go to school? What would happen if the majority of people went through a training like that? I think that would blow my mind.
Yeah.
I think part of it would be because it's an expectation in the culture. It would be just a lot easier to have happen.
I would love to have a photographic memory.
Well, and I also know